How did this whole idea come about? This character of Greg, I mean, when someone writes a book or even does screenplay movies, they actually would like to do their first project would be something that they can relate to. How does Greg relate to you in any way?
I think Greg's a lot like me as a kid at that age.
Right.
And sometimes like I am as an adult. He's got lots of flaws and imperfections.
Right.
He's not a fully formed human being yet.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot to learn. And
Right.
I think most of the humor comes from him not being perfect or him having a flawed perspective.
In films, was life really just like that? That's what a lot of the film goers of this generation tend to wonder. Was life really just how it was depicted in the movies at that time?
Well, it was very special because that era was really, really special. It was the Silver Jubilee era, the Golden
Correct.
Jubilee and the Platinum Jubilee era.
Correct.
And now it is the 100 crore era and
Correct,
the
yes,
200
that is
crore,
true.
So films are measured now in these figures. But, that era really, because I have seen it, I have tasted it.
Right.
Today's generation will really not know what it
Experience
was,
it, right.
they've never experienced it, so they won't know what it was.
When you talk about basically residents who pay too much in terms of property taxes, and also businessmen and women, when they talk, lots of them said that their property tax has actually gone up in the last 4 years. Now, what do you do? How do you help the working class family who basically are struggling to pay their mortgage as a city councilman, and also people who are looking to rent a place? Lots of people are saying that rent is actually at its highest. What do you do to basically encourage more homeowners to bring down the cost of rent?
I'm glad you asked that question, Imran, because, the housing issue, foreclosures, is actually not really as big of an issue as it was. But it's a unique issue that's still affecting our district where we live. Everybody else has solved this issue or has it under control. Yet District 28 in Southeast Queens has the highest rate of foreclosure 8 years or more after the crisis ended.
Now, if elected mayor, how do you make housing affordable?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to look at the cost of living in this city.
Correct.
And why is the cost of living so high? It is so high because the people at City Hall are passing regulations and policies that increase the cost of living, whether it be more taxes, for example. Property taxes, water bills, all have gone up double digits since this mayor has taken office. And as a matter of fact, the property tax levy, which is the pot of money that they then divvy up by the 4 classes of the property taxes, has gone up over 30%.
Correct.
30%, think
Right.
about that.
That's
So they're
true.
looking to get 30% more money from property taxes, from you, from me, from all the homeowners here in the city of New York. That is an issue of spending. And the way that this mayor has spent money, increasing spending by nearly a quarter the budget in 3.5 years. And he's going back to the property tax. So that has increased the burden on landlords, it's increased the burden on homeowners. Many seniors are being priced out because they can't afford, now they're retired, they're on fixed incomes, they can't afford their property tax bill every year. We have young people of my generation that I had gone to high school with have left. They've decided to start their families in other states where it's more affordable to buy their first home.
Now, transportation, that is a major issue in Queens. Now, lots of times people are complaining that if they miss one bus, that they have to wait a long period of time for another bus, or sometimes even the trains as well. You spoke about improving transportation. Now, if re-elected, how are you planning to do so?
Well, we're going to be holding, I'm in the middle of drafting a letter right now asking the governor to look at express bus service. They're actually doing it right now because of the summer of this difficult riding season, to either have express bus service or Long Island Railroad service from the Belmont Park station. There is a Long Island Railroad stop at Belmont Park. It's used mostly on the weekends for patrons who go to Belmont Park, and there's a lot of parking there also. There's thousands and thousands of parking spots.
As a city councilman, for people who have been a victim of a hate crime, and it's happened way too often, but they don't report it, what is something that you would say to encourage them to report it? And also, basically being the city council member, what do you do to bring hate crimes down in the district of Queens?
Well, probably one of the most important things you can do is what I just referenced, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's going out into the community and educating people.
Educating, right.
As you know, I've been doing this for a couple of years now,
Right.
meeting with all different ethnic backgrounds in my community where I live, right? So I've been going out there quite a bit already and educating people. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is we come in at the wrong end.
Right.
All right, we come in on the response end. What we want to be is more proactive.
Correct.
And as a city councilman, the way that happens is you invite me into your community. All right, I sit down.
With the act and the bill that you want to enforce if elected as public advocate, many people who are owners of small business will say, well, will this help them against the increase against taxes every year?
Well, that's another thing we have to fight.
Right.
The fact is that Bill de Blasio is the most anti-small business mayor the city has ever seen. That's one of the reasons why I oppose him, even as a Democrat. And I feel as though that we need this bill to take care of the rent problem, but we also have to make sure that the taxes and the fines are also not driving small business out of New York City.
Now, is there something that you always thought in mind that, okay, well, if you don't basically succeed in music, that you would like to pursue? I mean, what is something else you had in mind that you wanted to pursue?
Well, that's a really good question, actually, because I've always loved school and I loved science. But I realized that when you love something so much and you're extremely determined to make it happen, you kind of have to have a mindset that there is no backup plan and you need to make this work.
If elected as our if you become our newly elected public advocate, as I mentioned, that one of the roles is actually to co-sponsor and propose new legislation, I believe. In terms of renewable energy, as the newly elected public advocate, what are some things that you're planning to propose as if given you are receiving this title?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for anyone who owns a home or pays an electric bill, utilities, to think about that renewable energy is going to save them a lot of money at the end of the day.
Correct.
No one really talks about that. I also believe that there probably is a push from the coal industry and maybe the natural gas industry to not want you to make that switch to renewable energy.
You're fighting to preserve SHSAT. Now, give us an idea, actually. So SHSAT, I mean, what's the idea? Like, what's the whole issue on this here?
So basically, the SHSAT is a test that middle school students take to go into, I believe it's the top 5 Ivy League high schools, right, which normally graduates of these high schools go on to Ivy League colleges or top name colleges. So right now, our mayor is pushing a bill forth to abolish the test. My stance on it is I don't want the test to be abolished. I think our kids need to be educated on a standard that they're comfortable with. Right now, the abolishment of the test really gives 20% of students who didn't score well an opportunity to go to these schools.
Cameras. Let's talk about this first issue. What do we substitute speed cameras with, and how do we ensure neighborhood safety if we are getting rid of speed cameras?
That's a great question. I don't think the goal in the Republican conference is to get rid of speed cameras. The bill, as I understand it, in the state Senate that's being held up is a comprehensive bill that includes speed cameras, but also puts security into our schools, which is much needed because obviously there's been a spate of school shootings around the country there. As a Republican, I'm strongly in support of protecting our society, specifically our most vulnerable, one of which is children in school. So I think they're trying to get a comprehensive security bill, and it's unfortunate that the state Senate left their session without getting something done there. As a state senator in January of 2019, if I'm so lucky to be elected, I would force a vote and make sure that senators stay up in Albany until the most important things, one of which is public safety, and this bill gets done.
In terms of your boxing career, what's been your style? Actually, I mean, I've been a fan of boxing and also mixed martial arts, UFC and whatnot. So what's been your style actually in terms of boxing, and who are your trainers? How long have you been training with your particular trainers?
I've been training over 10 years, like I said, basically my whole life. My style comes from, I believe boxers' styles come from their body type and their strength. Growing up, I was never the fastest, I was never the strongest.
Is it possible for a Republican to really occupy this seat in 2019, actually, and especially being the thorn in Mayor Bill de Blasio's path?
Well, I would answer that in 2 ways. First, This is a nonpartisan special election, so there are no party labels on the ballot. When you go to vote, you won't see Democrats or Republicans. You will see 17 individual names of candidates who are running for this office, none of whom have their party affiliation attached to them. So I think that is an advantage insofar that we are forcing people, if you will, to vote for people over parties.